My friend, if you can't do push-ups, just like with everything else in the world, you can build up. Let me help. There's no reason to be ashamed if you can't do a push-up. Fitness is a journey and we all start somewhere. Plus, there are many kinds of push-ups. So we find one we can do, and we work it until we're strong enough to move on. We can start with some wall push-ups. Aim for 3 sets of 50. The reason you're doing so many is so you can practice your pushing motion. Next, we can do incline push-ups on a railing, table, or any stable surface. The lower the object, the harder. I recommend starting with something at least higher than your hips. Work these until you can do 3 sets of 40. Next, we finally go back to the ground, and we can do kneeling push-ups. And no, I never call these girl push-ups. This is a great therapy exercise that we don't need to shame, and I've never met a girl that likes them being called that. Anyway, work these until you can do 2 sets of 25. And then you should be strong enough to do a regular full push-up. Congratulations! If you start getting joint pain, you may have progressed too quickly. Go back to some of the easier variations. Sometimes our muscles are strong enough to move on, but our joints are not. If you're interested, I have a full YouTube video on this that I'll link in the comments. Have a beautiful day.
I woke up one morning and my truck was covered with more bees than usual, so I ran outside in my pajamas to see what was going on. A swarm of bees that I caught the night before was leaving their hive and swarming again. I tried to offer their new hive back to them, but they weren't moving in very quickly, which told me that they wanted to go somewhere else. It was a race between me and the bees. I had to find the queen before the bees found a place to fly off to. After a few minutes, I found her. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, but before I could put her in the new hive, I had bees swarming to her in my hand. As soon as I put the queen in the hive, the bees began to go right in. I still had some bees on my hand who weren't leaving because they could still smell their queen on me. So I shook them off so they could find her. Within minutes, the entire colony was rushing to get back into their new hive. You can see how fast they were moving and how the queen was covered in bees. I waited for all the bees to get into their hive, and it was another great day of saving the bees in my pajamas.
My channel went viral, which was very scary for me. I consider myself a bit of an introvert. The comments were how I was filling a void left in their life. Maybe their dad passed away or their dad left. My name's Rob Kenny, and I've been called the internet's dad.
Hey kids, how are you today?
I thought the channel was going to help 30 or 40 people. How to tie a tie, how to change a tire.
Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey.
It's how to cook. I've even read a few children's books, how to plant your grass seed.
You got this.
I'm trying to encourage, empower, and edify. You need to see how this is done.
When you say you're going to do something, you need to do it.
But I try to not waste your time because I don't want you to spend your whole time on the internet. You should be out enjoying life, right?
I love you. I'm proud of you. God bless you.
I wanted to know what I could do about it. 2,000 miles of highways and attractions. When I went back to Zimbabwe to do this mapping project, I was doing this alone, and a week after I got to Zimbabwe, Google sent a film team that was documenting the behind the scenes of this mapping project. They were able to capture, some of the solutions that I'd come up with to mapping different locations, whether it was at Victoria Falls, flying over the waterfall in a helicopter and capturing 360 footage, using a speedboat on the Zambezi River, or just cycling across the Victoria Falls Bridge. So some of those were ways to demonstrate how we could leverage this technology in unconventional places to really try and capture this imagery and improve the representation of those places. It felt empowering to be able to make that difference, to be able to make that connection and really make a difference in terms of the digital representation of my hometown and my country. It used to be that you look at a map and it is what it is. But as more people pick up these technologies, more people picking up these tools, maps become a confluence of perspectives. It's generally accepted that coverage usually begins from the United States and Western Europe of some of these products, and then it gradually spreads across the rest of the world. The pace at which that happens can be really slow. We are becoming increasingly dependent on location and navigation tools, from everyday service delivery to public health and safety, more so over the last couple of years, or at least over the last year. The most compelling thing for me is hearing from people who are using these images to help share a memory from their lives. I hear from people who say, I was able to show my daughter the home in which I grew up. I was able to show my kids the hospital in which I was born. Just being able to hear that people are using maps not just for navigation and finding places. They're using maps to make a connection. They're using maps to
remove bees from one of the weirdest places ever, this toilet. The bees had been living in the tank of this toilet for years, and they filled the entire space with comb and had no room left to grow. So I got to work removing the hive. Everything I removed from the original hive was safe for the bees to have in their new home. Here's what the comb looked like. This piece had honey at the top, pollen below, and brood on the bottom. I spent a lot of time carefully removing each piece of comb. This was a happy and healthy colony of honeybees, and they were not stinging me at all. After I removed all of the comb, the toilet was still full of bees, which told me the queen was in there. Suddenly, I saw her crawling up the side of the tank. I put her in a clip to keep her safe, and I placed her in the new hive. Then I made a little bee bridge that led straight to the queen so the bees could easily get to their new hive. It worked, and the bees marched right in. After the bees started to recognize the bee box as their new home, I closed up the hive, I waited for the colony to move into the box, then we drove home, and it was another great day of saving the bees.
I'm looking forward for surgery tomorrow, and I'm just looking forward to a good day.
So this is Charles. Charles had a tumor the size of a small watermelon attached to his face. It grew to that size in a year. And though it didn't hurt, you can imagine how uncomfortable that could be. So Dr. Graves said, hey, removing that looks like fun. I'll remove it for free. And so he did. Now, this